Hello, welcome to North Carolina Vietnam and Veterans Incorporated's Lessons of Vietnam. My co-host Bob Matthews and myself, Bill Dixon, we got a special show tonight. We want to do kind of a kickoff to November shows. We're going to be doing a show in November to discuss the Agent Orange and its aspects, as well as doing a follow-up show. The North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated, along with the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 530, and the National Vietnam Veterans of America, are working together to hold November shows because it's a very important thing. We're going to bring attention to the continuing effects of the use of defoliants in and around Vietnam and during the war. We want to give you a preliminary show, as I mentioned, to encourage you to invite all Vietnam veterans and their families to tune in and get the information about benefits and diseases and so forth that's affiliated with or presumed to go along with Agent Orange. In the meantime, give us a call at 919-518-9773 and ask Bob and I questions about Agent Orange if you like. We're not exactly experts. That's why we're going to have the show.
Yep.
Bob, what do you've been doing a lot of reading about Agent Orange.
Bill, this may be one of the most important shows we've done in a long time, because this is such a dilemma, because there's no right answer to it. You know, we talked before about the tactics of war, and sometimes when we talked about before something like the end justifies the means, most Americans that studied Vietnam and continue to study Vietnam know why Agent Orange was used. I don't know if they know what Agent Orange was or is, but they know why it was used. I'm sure you recall that also, why they used it.
Yeah. In fact, I believe you interviewed the gentleman who ordered Agent Orange to be sprayed along the riverbanks.
That was a privilege and an honor. I had a chance to meet and interview at length. He's passed away now, Admiral Zumwalt, Admiral Zumwalt, head of naval operations in Vietnam. He was the keynote speaker at a conference in Lubbock, Texas, at Texas Tech University. And Zumwalt then, Admiral Zumwalt, was the man, as you just mentioned, that ordered the spraying of defoliants to clear the riverbanks in Vietnam, because as we conducted our search and destroy missions in Vietnam on the rivers and the tributaries, not just us, but the Vietnamese also, they were being picked off like sitting ducks. Our men came back and they had no defense, and he had this as an option. Now, ironically, what happened is his own son, Elmo Zumwalt Jr., was on a riverboat at this time in history. He was sprayed, as most of us were in Vietnam. He came down with lymphoma, and eventually died at Rex Hospital in Raleigh.
Well, one of the reasons I understand they were spraying it because the deep foliage and jungle right up against the river, that when they did spray it and kill the vegetation there, they discovered concrete bunkers they never knew were there. So they were kind of sitting ducks on some of those narrow streams and so forth with the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese gunners and the machine guns as the boats went up and down. So in the process, he probably saved a lot of lives at the time.
Oh, he did. And you know, we said before, in a guerrilla warfare, which Vietnam was, there really are no rules. You do whatever you need to do to get through the day, to win the day, to accomplish your mission. Our mission in Vietnam was to stop the Viet Cong, stop the North Vietnamese, fortify the South Vietnamese, and stop communism. And part of it had to be giving our men a fighting chance. Well, one of the tools Admiral Zumwalt was faced with, I'm sure he debated it long and hard, because he told me he did. Do I use Agent Orange? Do I use the herbicide? Or do I look the other way? He took the hard path. And he said there wasn't a day of his life that he didn't go to bed thinking about it. He didn't feel guilty now, don't get me wrong. He felt responsible. There's a big difference there.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, he said he would do it again. I don't think the total ramifications that come about as far as the diseases, the veterans families and grandchildren and so forth are coming down with, because I really believe that he was told, just like we were told, oh, it won't hurt you.
Well, I don't think we had enough information. He was told to win the war.
Yeah.
He did the best he could. Now, if we had hindsight, as we said before, hindsight makes poets of us all. But Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, and some of you may know that we have a great connection with him and his family, NCVVI, and our lessons of Vietnam. His daughter, Musetta Zumwalt, lives in Cary, and we've talked to her at length, and we happened to meet the doctor at Rex Hospital that administered the care to Elmo Zumwalt Jr. So we have quite a history with this disease and with this thing that's going on now. And as Bill mentioned at the beginning of the show tonight, this seminar coming up, this town meeting, I should say, on Agent Orange, has three purposes. And one is to pique your interest in Agent Orange, to get you to do a little research, to maybe think about Agent Orange, and think about the people it affected, not just the soldiers. When they came home, their wives, their children, and the Vietnamese, their wives, their children, 3 or 4 generations. And as you well know, we mentioned on this show many times before, I believe Bill wants to mention a little bit about the native Montagnards in North Carolina.
Yeah. The Montagnards, or the hill people of Vietnam, when we first got there, they were basically, the women were topless and the men were wearing loincloths, living just about like what we think about the American Indian. And because they were living off the land and the heavy vegetation area, they probably got sprayed as much or more than anybody else. You know, Bob, a lot of people think about Agent Orange strictly with Vietnam veterans. And doing some research, I have found out that they were actually working with defoliants in 1944 and down in Florida.
Florida and the Everglades, Louisiana. They have tried this because this is really a biological weapon, a chemical weapon of warfare. It's something you could use if you use it properly, and we thought we were. Little did we know the ramifications 40 years later. We have 2 of our members, Al Ely and John Odom, were both on the swift boats in Vietnam. And as Bill mentioned before, Admiral Zumwalt, with his decision, saved a lot of lives, and later the ramifications, no one dreamed it would be as it is today, with millions and millions and millions being affected, lawsuits everywhere, Dow Chemical, Monsanto Corporation, the VA, the U.S. government, everybody's involved. It is a mess.
Well, you know, Bob, we think about Agent Orange, which was basically it was one formula. They started out with a formula, and then it wasn't quite strong enough, so they added to the formula. But it was the color of the stripe on the barrel, so it was different agents and so forth. You know, also it's not just a Vietnam vet or those of before. They're using defoliants today, and with the burn pits in Iraq and putting out the oil wells. So there's a lot of the soldiers coming home today who've also been exposed to chemicals in one form or another that could be later on found out the same situations that Agent Orange.
Well, Bill, no matter how you cut it, breathing and using a dioxin is not good for you. Whether it's in Vietnam, whether it's in Afghanistan, whether it's in your yard using Roundup, you should take proper precautions. And if your men are going to be subject to Agent Orange, which they were, looking back again with hindsight, we should have done several things. But you look back at Vietnam, the way you were affected in Vietnam were 5 ways. You were directly sprayed, like water on your body, the food you ate, the water you drank, the showers you took, the air you breathed, all had Agent Orange in it. So very few soldiers came back from Vietnam. In fact, I think they made a statement several years ago that anyone that served in Vietnam is a recipient of Agent Orange some way, somehow in their body.
Yes. In fact, that's the reason they have the presumption of a whole list of diseases.
Yes.
You know, people have been asking me why a show about defoliants or Agent Orange, because in 1962 to 1971, the United States sprayed approximately 20 million gallons of dioxin-contaminated herbicides over 6 million acres of Vietnam. 2.5 million Americans who served in Vietnam and millions of Vietnamese were exposed to it.
Sure.
That alone was reason enough to do the show, and as we're finding out that as we're finding out that more and more things are people are being affected even today. You know, 50 years after we're commemorating now, we're still having problems with Agent Orange and so forth. So I'd like to show you a little series on where did Agent Orange come from, and then Bob and I discuss it afterwards, and we're going to try and experiment here, and hopefully it works.
I was in the group that sprayed Agent Orange in Vietnam from July 67 to July of 68. That was the heaviest year of spraying in the whole war. The government, through the Army Chemical Command, first started dreaming up the use of herbicides to use in warfare at the end of World War II. And there were ongoing studies in Fort Detrick, Maryland, going back to 44, 45. Those studies never totally ceased through the 50s and the early 60s. Then came Vietnam.
The targets are hidden behind a mantle of dense vegetation.
The enemy took full advantage of the terrain in the undercover. The option was to clear the area so we could see them. And that was why Agent Orange was so popular by the commanders in the field. And leaders of the country proceeded to heavily invest in the chemical applications of defoliating the jungle. We were constantly reassured that this was harmless stuff. That was the propaganda that was given to us throughout all levels of the military. The formulations for Agent Orange, as they were developed by the military scientists in Fort Detrick, Maryland, did not have the toxicity of the Agent Orange that wound up being used when we mass-produced it and brought it to the field. The government decided to make more and more of it, and they took it from a rather controlled manufacturing process with one or two companies to where they wound up with about 8 or 10 companies that were actually producing it, and they had a number of subcontractors that were producing it. The problem became the chemical companies changed the way they were manufacturing Agent Orange to meet the production quotas. And it's very documented. They went from blending these herbicides under a low temperature for an extended period of time to blending them on an extremely high temperature in a short period of time, and that's where the toxicity of dioxin came in. That was really the root of the class action lawsuits that were brought against the chemical companies in the early 80s. There was a quasi-prohibition against suing a government supplier that was supplying things to a government specification. The crux of the argument was they made this Agent Orange different from what the specification was. Those lawsuits were making great headway until a judge forced a settlement that was very, very small, and that was dispersed within a couple of years. But it also shut off the dialogue and the disclosure of all this information about what really was in Agent Orange and what the effects could have been. So there was a tremendous amount of research data that could have come out of those industrial chemical companies that would have assisted the scientists in determining some of those things that we now know as the long-term birth defects and illnesses of our offspring. There have been several attempts to relitigate that have been unsuccessful to date. The theory that only those people that were in Vietnam were exposed to Agent Orange is not true. Agent Orange was used extensively in the United States. Massive amounts of it used in Florida, around the Eglin Air Base area, the panhandle of Florida, and that's where the ranch hand training was primarily done. Many of the military base commanders around the country found out that they could save money on their budgets by cleaning their perimeters with Agent Orange. It was used in a number of along waterways in a number of the naval bases around the country. Massive amounts of it were used in Panama. We also used it extensively in Korea. It was also, I believe, used at a couple of the bases in Japan. It was definitely used in the Philippines. It was much larger than the government ever said from the beginning. There have been a number of military leaders from Vietnam that have been asked the question, if you had to do it again, would you use Agent Orange as a tool of warfare? And I think almost universally they've answered, if we would have known that there was the long-term effects that were going to go on permanently, we would not have used it. It was not done out of any maliciousness. But that doesn't in any way alleviate the responsibility we have to the future generations that are going to suffer from this exposure. It could go 7 generations. It will be unknown, unheard of then, and people will still be suffering from our exposures.
Well, I want to thank Vietnam Veterans of America for supplying us with this video and some others we're going to be doing. They're a national organization where NCBI is more local. We're a very active organization, but I'm glad we're able to partner with them and reach more and more people through our show. We hope that they've been doing town hall meetings all across the country where they're limited into who they can get exposed to, because you can't get someone in a room or whatever. Sure. So hopefully by doing this show, Bob, you and I can stand back and kind of facilitate and let them get the information out that's needed and so forth. There was some interesting information that the man was talking about. Ranch hand was one of the original was actually the first use of defoliants in Vietnam, early on in Vietnam.
Bill, I had an opportunity a couple of years ago at a conference in Boston to meet Mr. McManus, and the man was just talking there about Agent Orange, and as you well know, he has Agent Orange. Yeah. He's one of the early pilots, and we talked about it, and the key word I thought he said was he wants to start a dialogue. Yeah. Now, we have been putting this off for almost 30 years. We know Agent Orange did this. We know it does this now. You can't excuse what people did before because you're responsible for what you do your entire life. And if we start a dialogue with these town meetings, people start asking questions, checking things out, checking things around the state, I think you're going to find a lot of information that we don't know and we will know.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the key things I think he mentioned a while ago was they had a formula. They tested the formula, but then they went back and changed the formula, but there was no more test. And I think a lot of the people that ordered Agent Orange were working off the information off the original, and then they went out and sounds to me like with all the different people making Agent Orange, they didn't have the quality control. So some of it was probably much more potent than the others.
Well, I think you're right. I think Mr. McManus also wants full disclosure. He wants companies, all the companies that were involved in mixing it, making money, to disclose and to pony up the compensation for these lawsuits, because most of them are just dead ends. Yeah.
Well, as he said before, a judge stepped in and just kind of made this is it, this is what's going to be paid out. But there's, I think that was even before some of the children were starting to come down with it. It's hard for a Vietnam veteran to prove that he was exposed to. We're all basically exposed, but if you come down with a problem that's, VA has recognized 68 diseases
68.
with problems from Agent Orange. The thing about it is, you got to file a claim, and as you have noticed on the news lately, filing a claim is one thing, but actually getting someone to do something about it, it takes a long, long time. And some of these veterans, when they file a claim, they don't have a whole lot of time, and trying to get their children who are coming down with the birth defects and so forth, claim to being part of the Agent Orange effects is even harder to do, and they don't even recognize basically the Agent Orange problems from the father. It's the female Vietnam veterans that actually get they consider to have the birth defects problems, not from the fathers. And it's been shown that a lot of the fathers, the daughters and sons, seems to be more daughters than of the veteran himself. The male veteran is also having the problems.
Well, Bill, there's a bill in the Senate now Bill number 162, which is designated, if it passes, and we're encouraging you to contract your senators and your congressmen to push this bill, 162, in the U.S. Senate. It's going to have unlimited funding to do more and more research on the effects of Agent Orange, how to fix it, how to stop it, how to trace it back to the recipients, as Bill just mentioned, men, women, and children, Bill 162. And I think once we start this bill, if we start asking questions, and we won't have people stonewall, because you're preaching to the choir about the VA. You call them, you get a menu.
Yeah.
It puts you on hold for 10 minutes.
Well, one of the frustrating things that the Ford Foundation had just announced that they're getting ready to do a big expose on Agent Orange and its effects to people in Vietnam.
Yes, they are.
They're not going to do one on the effects of Vietnam veterans here. They're going to do effects and try to raise money to have more money sent to Vietnam to help the people there. And
Yes.
they should be taken care of and compensated. But let's don't forget the people from this country who went out and served their country and having problems, and their children. I mean, going to serve in the war is one thing, but having your children and your grandchildren born with maladies related to Agent Orange is, the guilt trip has got to be tremendous.
Oh, it's terrible. We were talking before about what do you do, because once you say that Agent Orange, we encourage all of our members to get a blood test, get on the registry, and start to trace where you've been. When Mr. McManus mentioned 67, 68, the heaviest spraying in Vietnam, 67, 68, 69. Also the most troops in that period too. When were you in Vietnam, Bill?
67, 68.
As was I.
They told me that they didn't spray them with a helicopter. Well, somebody forgot to tell that helicopter that sprayed me that they didn't want to spray an Agent Orange. It wasn't all the big airplanes and so forth. A lot of the helicopters sprayed them.
They sprayed from fixed wing and rotary.
Yeah.
And they sprayed a lot.
Well, they've been fighting the Blue Water Navy guys. The Brown Water Navy guys, they've kind of accepted them into the
Sure.
Agent Orange. But the Blue Water Navy guys, that was where a lot of the stuff was shipped over, and some of the airplanes were sprayed were loaded there on the Blue Water Navy guys.
Exactly.
So they were exposed to it just like we were.
In fact, they may have been exposed more.
Yeah.
Because they handled it all day directly. Loaded it, filled the barrels, sealed the barrels, dropped the barrels, picked them up over and over and over.
Well, the Veterans Administration has been dragging their feet about recognizing them as a viable candidate for Agent Orange problems and so forth. The next video we want to show you is kind of discuss what do you know about Agent Orange? You, the public out there, and your friends and so forth. As Bob mentioned, we want to get a dialogue going about Agent Orange so that more and more people know about it, know about the past for us old-timer Vietnam vets, as well as the men and women we're sending out to war today. So we're going to watch another video that VBA has furnished us, calls "What Do You Know About Agent Orange?"
A high school student.
Sales associate,
fish biologist,
filmmaker, and a studio technician.
management analyst.
I'm a student.
Agent Orange.
I feel like I've heard of that before, and I should know what it is.
They talked about it in our 9th grade history class. They mentioned that it happened to some of the veterans.
No, never heard of it.
It's a chemical weapon, right?
Wasn't it like napalm or something?
I have no idea what that is. From what I've heard, at least.
It was a defoliant used in Vietnam to reduce vegetation.
It's apparently not very good for you.
It probably causes cancer.
A lot of defects to kids who were born after the Vietnam War.
I know my friend's grandpa, he had it, and he died very young. Like, she only met him once. And I just know that it makes you really sick.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Most definitely. I would support that. The government is here and is put in place to serve the people, and to protect the people.
I would want the government to do more, a lot more.
If the information is going to empower people and help people to be able to protect themselves or to be able to understand how to respond to Agent Orange, then yeah, there's no doubt we should be fully informed about it.
There's some great sites online as well as Facebook. There's the Children of Agent Orange on Facebook. There's some great information there. We hope to reach out and touch some of them for our show. The show is going to be, the first show, which we're going to have some experts on, will be the 12th of November. Our shows, if you by chance getting this as one of the archive shows, start at 8 o'clock and go to 9 o'clock. The first show on 27th, we'll be talking about Agent Orange and the benefits and its problems and so forth. We'll give numbers for you to call if you have want to make a claim, people that will be on the lines to help you out with claims with Agent Orange problems and so forth. And then we'll do a follow-up show on the 26th. We're also planning on some other additional shows partnering with the Vietnam Veterans of America concerning post-traumatic stress, which is another ongoing problem with Vietnam vets as well as the veterans today. And then another one we're going to be doing on the Vietnam Initiative, where we're helping the South Vietnamese find some of their, or North Vietnamese people find some of their people. So those are the shows we're going to have coming up. Bob, you know, it's you're sitting there and listen to those people who have no clue, most of them, about Agent Orange. And as Vietnam veterans, we just kind of ignore it too. It's like, if I don't have it, I ain't going to worry about it. But
well, Bill, you know, you're 20 years old in Vietnam, 21 when you come home. You're indestructible. You think nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong. You go on with your life. That's all. Suddenly you turn 30, you turn 40. Little things start perking up, this and that, and all of a sudden, you go see somebody. And they say, well, wait a minute. Did you serve in Vietnam? They start tracing you back. What was refreshing to me, Bill, about that video was people were actually saying, I don't know, but I want to know. They're interested. And in this information age we live in, if you're ignorant about something, that's by choice. If you want to find something out, get busy. Ask questions like those young guys were doing there. Some knew what it was, but they all wanted to know more about it. They're concerned. And we've said many times on this show, we have a responsibility as veterans and as Americans to take care of our soldiers when they come home their whole life. It's a maintenance program. If a guy comes home and he's hurting, you help him out. If a guy comes home and he's hungry, you buy him a meal. If a guy comes home and he's hurting, you show him to go to the hospital, you give him the proper care. If it's Agent Orange, you get busy. You go to these town meetings, you put your hand up, and you don't sit down. If someone like Dow Chemical or Monsanto says, okay, we're going to make a sweeping settlement, we'll give everybody $12,000 over a 10-year period. And if you accept that, you have to sign this piece of paper saying you'll take no more benefits, you'll get no disability, no food stamps, no help. It is almost like Catch-22. You can't allow these veterans and their families to be uninformed and be swindled again. Enough is enough.
Well, you know, we drafted the fathers, or some of us joined, and you went, but a lot of us would probably have gone, wait a minute, I might even thought about going to Canada as much as never came to my mind, just thinking about that if I ever have children, they're going to suffer more than I suffer, or as much as I suffer from the disease I got. That'd be a tough choice if we had known at the time that, yes, any children or our grandchildren could very well be suffering from what we do today. It's really frightening to look back now and look back from then and look at now that the problems that are coming out of this chemical that may have saved some lives at the time, but we're paying a terrible price. The veteran community is paying a terrible, terrible price for that safety.
Well, Bill, you know, I don't think it may have saved many lives. I think it did. And I think if you would approach a group of Army or Air Force or Marines, whoever, your soldiers, approached them and said, what do you think about using Agent Orange? You can't have fighting a war as a democracy. You have to tell people what to do, and they have to do it. And that's the way you win or lose a war. If you have everything for a debate or a discussion, you'll get nothing done. Now, I agree completely that we now have a dilemma of immense proportions on our hands, and it's our own fault. But it's something we must correct. And if correcting it means money, if it means research, if it means marching, if it means getting to the bottom of a problem, we know how to do this. Americans have solved problems since we've been America. This is a big one, affecting a lot of people, and it makes you scratch your head. Why didn't I know more? Why didn't I care? Well, I did care, but I didn't know enough about it till I come back until recently. I hope I don't have Agent Orange, but I'm not sure. I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out.
You and I just celebrated our birthday, and we're fairly decent health, but
51.
Yeah, 51. Yeah, 51. I can remember back 51.
Okay.
But you can't ever tell. In my case, my daughter is adopted, and my grandchildren are adopted. So, but then I don't know the history of their birth parents and so forth, and going back. So even they could be affected by it and so forth. In 1970, the Veterans Administration came down with a list of diseases and so forth, which they keep adding to it.
Sure, they do.
And but they started an Agent Orange registry, and I've got the information here. This information here on the calendar. I'm going to download this stuff onto the website so you can see it. This particular book, again, is by VVA. Service-connected disability compensation for exposure to Agent Orange for veterans and their families. Some great information. I've got one here, Agent Orange, dioxin, and other toxic substances, birth defects, position paper. I'm going to download all this to the website so you can go on our website and get some of this information and read about it, learn a bit more about it and so forth. But, one of the frustrating things about the information. Oh, by the way, the website is ncvi.org. You can go on there and see any of our past shows, archives, and get the information like this. If you have questions now, either come in on 919-518-9773 or Computers 2K Voice. That's Computers 2K as in Kilo Voice on Skype. And ask us some questions or make a comment about Agent Orange. Who do you know that's affected by Agent Orange? We met a guy in Tennessee. We were there doing interviews for a whole company that actually they all re-upped several times together to stay together.
Yes, they did.
But the lieutenant was spraying Agent Orange out of a handheld pump on his back.
Yeah.
You pump it up and then spray it, and he had Agent Orange. He was sent home early because of Agent Orange problems. That was, most time we think about people who got sick later. He was sick he got sick, terribly sick while he was there in Vietnam.
He was sick while he was doing it. He was breathing it all in. Well, Bill mentioned earlier that we are wannabe facilitators, and we'd like you to do this. If you're a Vietnam veteran, please go get a blood test. You don't have to go to the VA in Durham. You don't have to go to the VA at all. Go to your doctor, your normal doctor, and get a blood test and get your name on the Agent Orange registry. There's 68 diseases. Most are cancer, related kinds of cancer, diabetes, things like this. Look at what Bill's putting on the website and read it carefully. Then sit down with a tablet, take a pen, and write down the people you know that served in Vietnam. Write their phone numbers down. Make a couple phone calls. Get your blood tested.
And have those people to watch the show along with you in November to find out more information and how to go about getting benefits or know what diseases and so forth and how to put claims and so forth. It's going to be an education, learning experience for all of us, and I'm looking forward to it, and we hope that you can reach out to all the veterans and their families, not just the veterans, but if you know a veteran who's passed, their family and their children would very well be interested in this too. I'm just sitting here, Bob, looking at this brochure that we gave out, and it says down here, caution, military service may pose increased risk to your health.
Yeah. Wow. Are you serious?
That's what it says right here. It says, did you serve in the United States military? The Department of Veterans Affairs has determined that certain illnesses and health concerns have been associated with military service. It's enlightening. But what they give us a website here, www.veteranshealth.org, and it will give you information about how to file a claim and so forth. That's www.veterans with an S health.org for more information about claims and so forth. I hope you'll tune in to the show. One of the things that surprised me doing this research, even if you sign up on the register, it doesn't mean anything unless you file a claim.
Exactly right.
Your name can be on the register, and you come down, or some of your family comes down with some of the presumed diseases like diabetes. If you got diabetes 2, you automatically get compensation or whatever for it. But if you don't go in and sign up for claims, it doesn't make a difference what registers you're on. It's a very time-consuming and complex issue, and don't try to do it yourself. Talk to a veteran service officer.
Yeah.
Call VBA or call some of the local veteran service officers and get the information and so forth. So, like I said, the claims process is complicated. I'm working on my 11th month now, waiting for an MRI, just myself, for arthritis, and which is not on the Agent Orange, but so forth. But
well, Bill, one of the things too we got to think about it and tell hopefully the audience tonight that when you go into your doctor and you get a blood test, and you want him or her to come back in their nice white coat, walk back in and say, "Guess what? You do not have Agent Orange," but you might have to tell that doctor some information, because you can't assume the medical community is well informed on 58 diseases related to Agent Orange. It's been an uphill battle with this, and part of the problem is the medical community. It takes a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of testing, and we just went through a terrible period of the VA negligence. We don't need that again. We need everybody on watch to pay attention.
Well, Bob, what do you call a doctor who finishes last in his class?
Doctor.
Okay. So everybody, just because he's got the word doctor after his name or in front of his name, doesn't mean he knows anything about Agent Orange. So get the report, and if it looks something like an abnormality at all, get it to someone who is familiar with Agent Orange. You told me earlier tonight how much money we have paid Vietnam to help the Vietnamese people there who are having problems with Agent Orange.
We have allocated $41 million to Vietnam to clean up where Agent Orange and Agent White and Agent Purple and Agent Pink were stored, the barrels of them. The primary place is Da Nang, where we were, by the way.
Yes.
In Da Nang, Vietnam. To clean it up, they have now what are called peaceful villages in Vietnam, where 100 Vietnamese that have Agent Orange symptoms go and are cared for by doctors to get through the Agent Orange dilemma. So we are helping South Vietnam. We got to help Americans too.
Yes, it's time we step up and help the Americans, the American soldier and their families and so forth. We have another video that kind of puts a face to the Agent Orange problem. This young lady lost her father due to Agent Orange, and she talks a little bit about her problems with Agent Orange, and then we'll discuss her dilemma after this. And
sure.
Join us in watching this brief video.
My name's Danielle. I'm 30, and my father's name is Reuben Charles Perry III. My dad, he was my whole life. He was my best friend. He passed away June 3rd, 2005, unexpectedly due to a massive heart attack where his heart exploded in his chest. He was 56. I carry the Vietnam War on my shoulders like I was there, and I wasn't there. And I shouldn't have to carry that, and nor should any child of a veteran have to carry that pain and that scar on them. It's been burned into me. And I have to live with it every day because of the illnesses that I do have. I have spondylolisthesis, spondylolisthesis, conversion disorder, arthritis, bulged discs in my back, hip dysplasia, cervical dysplasia, gastritis, vertebrae that are fusing together, torticollis, major depression. I believe I'm sick due to my father's service in the Vietnam War in Agent Orange because there is no explanation. I have the back problems and the muscle spasms. Sometimes I can't sit up out of bed, but for me to go buy a bed that would sit me up and that would have heating, I can't afford that. I can't even work, and what you get on disability isn't enough to barely make it by. What I would want is for there to be programs out there with doctors who are educated in the effects of defoliants and herbicides and these chemicals that they use in war and the effects that they can have on the soldiers and their children and their grandchildren and every generation to come after that. A place to get help, a place where you can go where the doctor doesn't look at you like you're crazy because you say, I have this and I think it's because of the exposure that my father or mother had during their service in this war. I think that it's time that they stand up and they take responsibility for what they have done to Vietnam veterans and their children and the Vietnamese, what they have done by spraying these chemicals day in and day out for the rest of my life. I've got to live with this, and so will my daughter. We're the ones that have to pay.
That is just one of the many faces of Vietnam.
That's pretty strong.
I mean, there's not much she doesn't have.
Wow.
And to think about her father that she loved, and I'm certain he loves her, brought that home to his daughter and possibly to his granddaughter. That alone was just about to make his heart explode. But lost her father, and then she has all these.
That's probably one of 10,000 stories like that.
Yes, I have a whole list in the Agent Orange packet that I've been going through of soldiers, their daughters, granddaughters, and it seems to be just about every place that I have looked so far. Not necessarily all, but it seems to be daughters affected more than the guys or sons, and it's just watching that is just unbelievable. The legacy that the Vietnam War still has out there for those who are veterans.
We said it months ago, Bill. 7 letters that changed the world. Vietnam. It never stops. Now, what I was thinking before about this coming on the show tonight, when we heard from families that are directly affected, they have no vested interest other than getting better. The companies that make this and the government that used it, they have to take some blame. They have to take some responsibility. As she just mentioned, take care of your mistake. Buy her a bed. Have a place where these people can go for solutions. We can have solutions.
Well, the first step, I think, in that, Bob, is to recognize that there is a problem out there.
Yes, you're right.
I think it goes back to, again, as you mentioned before, starting a dialogue. For so long, they didn't exist. Nobody paid attention to them whatsoever. And it's more and more that it's proven that these people are, for no other reason, they don't have inherited these diseases from their ancestors. It's just been there with their the father or grandfather or great grandfather, as it would be. And it's just like for a long, long time, there was no such thing as Agent Orange problems, or as we call them today, the burn pit problems, or the post-traumatic stress problems, and so forth. It's hard to ask American soldiers to join a military now and go fight for this country because, as the cliche says, freedom is not free. But you can't expect those soldiers who put their life on the line for this freedom to pay the rest of their lives and their offspring's lives from trying to make this a better country and a free and safe country without the people of this country stepping forward and going, okay, we'll do whatever it takes.
You have to have their
back to appreciate it.
Now, we speak a lot in high school classes, And there's a wave of patriotism running through this country. Almost every young person wants to serve. We can't have this as an epitaph. If you're going to serve, you're going to put yourself in harm's way. In harm's way, there's danger. And after the danger, there's death. And after death, there's a lot of people have to deal with the emotional stress. There has to be a safety net. We have to establish not just a dialogue, we have to establish a procedure where these people can assess damages, where you don't open up Pandora's box and everybody coming in for money. You have to have a method where someone can come in with proof. Yes, I'm a daughter of a Vietnam veteran. Yes, I have this disease. Yes, I have this. Have a table of compensation. We can do this. This bill in the Senate is designed to do that.
Yeah.
Bill 162.
And what you need to do is to contact your congressman and talk to him about 162. Make sure he even knows anything about it, and get something passed. I know right now getting something passed in Congress and so forth is like pulling hen's teeth. But if you keep right on after it over and over and over again, we can wear them down. And they like votes. And if enough of us get together and go, we expect something to be done. Putting our young men and women, putting their life on the line is one thing, but putting the lives of their children on the line is asking too much from them, and needs to be some kind of protection out there. So if this problem can be eliminated and eliminate some of the problems that's causing the problems.
Exactly, because one thing is for sure, we must remember that malice was not planned. This was not planned.
No.
Agent Orange was used to win the war, to save lives. This after effect, but even though malice was not planned, you're still responsible.
Well, you know, Bob, I just recently had a wreck and I totaled my car, and I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened, and Agent Orange and its repercussions just happened. And now, but I was responsible for getting the other guys. My insurance company was responsible for getting the other guys' car fixed plus mine. And it's time the government and these companies step forward and go, okay, I don't expect them to go bankrupt, but I do expect them to stop producing this stuff, which they're still doing today. If you've ever heard of something called Roundup, which is basically the same thing, and step forward and go, okay, it's happened. Now let's take care of what's the people that has happened to. You remember the thalidomide babies?
Oh.
Back in our day.
Remember river pollution?
Yes.
They're clean now, aren't they? Well, what I'm thinking now is this, Bill. You just mentioned it. We have to clean up the mess. We have to ban use of dioxides. I mean, how much simpler can you make it? Don't use this stuff anymore for anything.
Yeah. Well, you know, thinking about that, and we were just back in Vietnam last few times we've been back, we didn't see the mosquitoes at all.
Not a one.
They banned DDT.
Yes, they did.
There's been a lot of diseases came out of that ban. People who are dying from different diseases that were because of lack of not using DDT. The mosquitoes and other things are carrying diseases, and I don't know whether Ebola is carried by disease by mosquitoes and so forth, but been a lot of people died from that ban. Yeah, we saved the eagles, but how many people we lose with that ban? But we're not banning something that's killing people wholesale and so forth to a certain extent.
I think you're right about the companies made a lot of money, and we saved a lot of lives. But that was then. This is now.
Yeah.
You have to deal with the problem now. You have a child that has a malady. You have to try to fix it. You have a woman that has a birth defect or a child. You have to try to fix it. If you can assess the blame, then you have to. That's why we have courts of law. Why we have lawsuits. Another problem is you've got states and you've got federal. You've got a mess. This is an absolute mess for litigation. It's a lawyer's dream, but it's a mess.
Yeah. And going back to the history, and the problems at VA is not new.
Oh, no.
Those problems have been going on. I mean, we've always said, us veterans have always said, you know, if you file a claim, it was like, you know, keep denying. Eventually, the veteran's going to die, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, they did.
That's nothing new. I mean, that's been since we came home from Vietnam.
Yeah.
the rumor or whatever, just keep right on denying it, and eventually the veterans are going to die, and we're going to solve that problem. Well, it's time now that, as they say, the roosters come home to roost. It's time to get out there and start doing something about the problem instead of shuffling it away. Because as Vietnam veterans, we didn't come back and keep our mouth shut.
That's right.
We said, okay, this is the way it is, and we started doubting. I think the Vietnam War and so forth was one of the first times we really started doubting that everything our government says was not the gospel.
I think you're right. And I think it's, excuse me, it's also time to stop having committees, stop having blue ribbon panels, start having people that are qualified, medical people, scientists on committees, assess the problem, assess the damage, contact the companies, give them a bill. Your bill is due. This is your bill.
Yeah.
You owe it to these people. You want to divide it up any way you want. Let them decide. There you go.
Well, one of the strange things I found that over the years, you have a movie star who makes a movie about farming. So Congress has them come in and testify about farming. They have never seen a farm. They just made a movie about it, so all of a sudden they're experts.
Yes.
And so often we take people because they're celebrities and look at them as experts. We need to get people who are true experts, who know what they're talking about, to come up with reasons and methods and so forth, and not just sit down to have a celebrity come talk to you, as Congress has a tendency to do. I have seen them do that so many times. They have a movie star who made a movie about such thing, and all of a sudden, because they can memorize a script and live in playland instead of, they don't live in the real world, they live in a playland, and all of a sudden they're experts on the issue.
Well, one of the things you have to do is sit down at your computer and type in some of the keywords. You type in ranch hand, you type in Agent Orange, you type in dioxides, you type in Agent White. You keep looking, and pretty soon there is so much information you can't digest it all.
Yeah.
I tried before the show tonight. I've got another 2 weeks to read. There's so much out there on this. It's such a problem. I think it can be solved. But it's going to take a lot of work.
Well, that kind of goes back to why we're doing these shows coming up in November, because everybody does not have the time or the ability to look up all these things. You need to have some education, but the reason for the two shows we're getting ready to do is to give people a foundation for what Agent Orange is, what it does, and if you're affected, how to get treatments and or benefits. And that's the reason we kind of put this show together with Vietnam Veterans of America, is they're doing town hall meetings all over the country.
Yes, they are.
And we're hoping that we can add to the town hall meetings they're doing and make this show that it can be seen nationwide, worldwide for that matter, over the internet. We have a tool that they don't have, and to use that information so that you're not overpowered. We'll also, again, as I mentioned before, we'll have people standing by on phones that if you need more information or whatever, you can call them and talk one-on-one. We're not going to be talking about your individual case.
Of course not.
We're going to be talking about individual, or based not individual. That's when you talk to people on the telephone to talk to your individual problems or situations. We don't want to get into your personal life at all. This is a general knowledge of Agent Orange and its effects and how you can get the benefits.
Well,
That's
Bill,
what we're going to be. Write this number down on your piece of paper so that you'll have it when the time comes for the show. It's 919-518-9773, or come in on Skype, and the Skype address is computers at COMPUTERS 2K voice. And you can type in your request or ask questions and so forth from that. But put this stuff away and give it to your friends and encourage them all to come in on the show.
Sure.
And we'll have another show in October, and we'll not be on Agent Orange. We just did this show to give you time to get all the people you know, all the veterans, whether Vietnam veterans, Iraqi veterans, Gulf War veterans, all the different veterans, because this is something that touches all of them's lives. And be ready and be here for the show. It's kind of like the old thing, be red or dead or something. And well, this is an opportunity to get all the information that you want, and we're looking forward to our next show. We have a guest in mind. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot right now. There's some issues we're trying to work out with this guest. It's an unusual guest. This person served
Wonderful
in Vietnam.
Guest. Wonderful.
Who now is having some physical problems,
Yes.
and started out with diabetic, and it's gone into some other health problems. But we hope to have this person on the air. We may have to do it from Skype, but we're looking forward to having this person, and again, getting ready for our Agent Orange show in November. Again, it's November 12th and 26th, and 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, just like we have done all these other shows. We thank them for tuning in, and I'm going to let you finish off the
Well,
show with
ironically,
what you-
Bill, our next guest that has the problems is directly Agent Orange. Now, what I mentioned before is this. This is a nationwide dilemma. And we have always grown up in this country, and the words come up, burden of proof. If you think you have Agent Orange, you're going to be faced one day with a burden of proof. You have to get your records together. When you served in Vietnam, what you were exposed to, do your homework. If you get a lawsuit, if you get a settlement, you're going to need to prove it. Because most companies, will stonewall. So get yourself together, pay attention, do your homework.
There are lists or data about what day and where the sprayings were taking place.
Yes, there is.
Now, knowing the military as well as I do, there's probably days that got sprayed that's not on the report, but there are other ways to go back and prove those days, finding someone that was with you or whatever, but that's some of the things we'll be learning.
Oh, sure. Sure.
And again, as I mentioned before, they started looking at defoliants in 1944, used in Korea, used quite a bit in all over the United States, as McManus said. And I just don't think it's a Vietnam problem. It's a United States problem. And it's still there. It could be a ticking time bomb for any of us that could be all of a sudden come down with something that's affected by Agent Orange. You wonder how many people have died not even knowing.
Let's get busy.
Sounds great.
Yep.
Again, thank you for tuning in to North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Lessons of Vietnam show. We're looking forward to seeing you again. And we thank Amnon for looking at this electronically, because Bob and I are challenged when it comes to shows and computers and so forth. He mumbles on his breath a whole lot during the show, but we get it done. Again, Mr. Amnon, we thank you
He's a
for
genius.
all you do.
guys.
And that's it.
Good night.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.